everybody, and welcome to the Family Pictures Podcast. I'm Jim Groom, and I am joined here by the great
Michael Branson Smith.
That's right. So now that we've done station identifications, it is worth talking a little bit about our next and last film in the Families on the Run series. So this is the kind of theme we've been doing for the last 6 films, Families on the Run. Been a lot of fun. We started with Hannah, I believe.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think this film has a interesting contrast to Hannah and dads training their daughters to be revolutionaries, but we never see where Hannah's all about. We are seeing all the training and the results of that training, where this is like, yeah, but what if you were just trying to be a dad?
And then
but all that training must have happened. That's what's so interesting.
It's
Anyway,
true.
Sorry.
But then there's Running on Empty, which deals with River Phoenix and, his revolutionary parents who aged and are on the run. We then went to Mosquito Coast, which was another kind of River Phoenix film, but also dealing with kind of families on the run, but also the sense of revolutionary thinking. Our last film, Children of Men, all of our films, almost all of them had to do with this idea of a revolutionary cell. Of a family that was kind of dealing with this, bringing us to our last film, which is One Battle After Another by Paul Thomas Anderson. This is a 2025 film. It's still in the theaters, at least it was in LA. I saw it on Monday. And quick note, Michael, this is the first film, I think, since I was a kid that I saw in the theaters 3 times.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
And in 2 languages, which that's a first pretty much most things with the film. But I really liked it. We'll talk a bit about that. But I think by the time this podcast goes live, we will have just passed our 1-year anniversary of podcasting.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So
yeah,
this is kind of a big episode. This marks, I think it's episode 41 or 42, and it
42.
marks 1 year of marriage between Michael and I, podcasting marriage, if you will.
Oh well, Jim, as part of our anniversary, are you ready for your voluntary vulnerability study? I can set up the double Yankee White. How's that sound for a present?
Exactly. That is awesome. So what do we know about this film? You always, Michael, are the key researcher of this team. And what have you figured out production-wise?
Okay, so there's a few things that stood out. Like, I think the thing that I'm learning about the whole production notes and reviews and stuff is it's kind of just finding the nuggets that are interesting to you. And I mean, it's generally tougher for a film that is literally still in the theaters. You don't get as much. You have your like production styled photos of things when it was being shot in 2024, blah, blah, blah. But you don't really know the story. But what is important is that PTA was working on this film for many, many, many years. It was like, incubating in his mind for a really long time. It's based on an adaptation of another. He did a Pynchon film earlier, but this is Thomas Pynchon's 1999 Vineland, which takes place in the time of Reagan re-election, and there's a former hippie trying to find his wife with his teenage daughter, and she's had a relationship with a federal prosecutor, and it has those like Weather Underground feelings. And that book was framed propulsively, like it was propelling itself by the character's reflecting on his hippie past, and he keeps like flashing back to the 60s. And this is a very different approach, right?
It is, but it's interesting too. I mean, this is his second adaptation, or at least inspiration from Pynchon. The other one being, forgetting the name. Why am I forgetting the name? But it's with Joaquin Phoenix and Josh Brolin, who are both amazing. And it's a film that I've come to return to. It's called Inherent Vice. And I return to because I'm thinking it's like the thinking man's Big Lebowski. Like it has the same kind of mentality, but it's also with, Pynchon thinking back on the 60s and reflecting on like, this kind of lost moment, kind of like he does with Vinland. And I'm thinking that what Paul Thomas Anderson kind of does is updates that for us. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of taking that, but not focusing so much on the '60s, but focusing on the more immediate past, like the early 2000s or '90s. And I think
Mm.
he's kind of paralleling some of what Pynchon is doing. And Pynchon just came out with another book called The Shadow Ticket, I think. And Pynchon is proving himself to be like somewhat of a seer in terms of where consumerism
Yeah.
leads a culture like America, like right into the arms of fascism. And I think it's an interesting movie to do at this moment. We could talk about that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, for fun tidbits, like I can give you some, like he they shoot the scene of the Christmas Adventurers Club, like the mansion is actually the Ronald Reagan mansion, which is so batshit ironic and awesome.
Yeah.
This is another one where, which is probably my favorite scene in the film, is basically the breakfast scene between Willa and Bob. And Willa is going to a dance, and he ends up getting she ends up getting picked up by a bunch of friends, and at the door is this poor schmo Bluto. His name's Bluto. And he gives this tough guy dad talk to him, like, whatever you do to my daughter, I'll do to you and more when you get back. And apparently PTA said this is something he learned. He got this story out of Sean Penn, because Sean Penn actually had done this to a kid who was going to take his daughter out on a date, which is just hilariously
I
awesome.
wonder if he was in character as Lockjaw, because that would have been awesome if he watched.
And other things that were fun is, like, so there, as part of like pushing this film out, PTA and the Directors Guild of America did a PTA event with PTA and Spielberg. And my goodness, Spielberg was just like so smitten with this film. Like, he's like, I had already watched it 3 times, and he's just talking about working with DiCaprio and Benicio del Toro, Benicio, and yeah, yeah, I had that right, Del Toro. And what's interesting to me, and this is the one that I was thinking about, is he was so, and I think I am too, he's so in love with PTA's like language in this film, and like the specificity of it all. And it really made me start to think of, like, this is like a Tarantino type script with the specificity of the language, and
Absolutely.
how important it was to, I mean, I just had like just a quick like list of random ones. Like, I already did the double Yankee White to you, which is one, and just like things like Special Agent Toe Jam and Rimhorn's Chicken Lick and Frozen Food
Yeah.
Farm, and Billy Goat is in the Wind, Implement Plan, Snack Crackle Pop, and even towards the end, QST on Whiskey Scour in Oakland, and it's all this coded language that's specific, but it all is meaningful and makes sense in the moment. And Spielberg just couldn't stop. It was one of the many things he just couldn't stop talking about.
It's interesting you bring up Tarantino, because when I was watching this film, the first thing I thought, and I've heard Tarantino talk about Paul Thomas Anderson and like really say, like, I'm really lucky and honored to be making films at the same time he is, and along, so he
Yeah,
really sees him as like a contemporary artist. And you know this is Paul Thomas Anderson kind of out Tarantinoing Tarantino. I was like,
I
he's
kind of
obviously
agree.
homaging, like he's a huge homage to Tarantino, but he's like taking it to the next level at some points. And I'm just like, wow, like there's a politic in this that never really shows up in Tarantino. And
No.
I think that's what's super interesting about this film. And my friend Zach Davis, who when he just came out, me and him were joking about it and talking about it via text. And he's like, the difference with this film with a lot of the other films he's made is it's in the moment and it's contemporary and it feels relevant. It's not always just looking back.
Yeah.
It's like people go there and they see their moment and they're like, fuck, kind of like Children of Men, right? Like there's a real moment where you associate the spaces, right? And this space that's supposed to happen in the early 2000s at the immigration camp where we start off the film
Yeah.
seems
Uh-huh.
very like you're just walking into a space in America right now in a kind
Yeah.
of
What's
political moment.
what's PTA's name for ice in the film? I keep forgetting. It's it's an act. It's an we don't we never even it's never even communicated to. I don't think what the acronym is, but it's named as like MKL or ML. It's not MLK, which would be
Yeah,
bizarre.
imagine.
But
Yeah.
MKU. They're the MKU. So there's literally MKU raids, and I was like, my God, if they just had worn masks, we'd be in the real moment that we are right
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah. And I mean, we can start getting onto that. A couple of more facts that you bring up that I really liked in the production notes. Me and my kids did some vacationing this summer and we went up to Eureka, Crescent City, essentially. And we completely identified that moment when he was coming out of the toilet and like running from his house. That's totally that kind of Eureka, which seems very different than the desert space. And I really love that. But this whole idea that they filmed it at Eureka High School during the
Yeah.
actual prom.
Yeah. Well, they went to they didn't do it during the prom, but they went to their prom and just to record the whole like just to document. It's like this thing that I'm talking about. This is the specificity of world building that these kind of directors do and the research they do. It's like I'm I'm flawed. Like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know what the teens are into these days, so I need to look
Uh-huh.
it up. And so he goes to Eureka High School's prom. He records every song. He notes all their fashion trends, and then he basically invites a couple hundred of the students to be extras in the film, which is amazing too, right? It
Yeah,
has
totally.
that kind of documentary feel to it as a result of that. Do you know Willa Ferguson? No. Do you know Willa Ferguson? No.
Yeah. That is a great scene. The guy who starts, yeah, we will go
Yeah.
to that too. I mean, the final note you make, which is was interesting to me too. I saw it on a Facebook comment um, from this great theater in Barcelona called Phenomena. And I've been there. If you're ever in Barcelona, go to this movie theater. It's amazing. I saw 2001 there. I saw Child's Play there. I saw a Night of the Living Dead there. It's just an amazing theater, like one of the
Oh,
best
that's
I've ever
fun.
been to.
Oh, getting to see old movies in the theater again, it's just such a treat, isn't
It
it?
it is great, and so I think that's one of the best I've been to in Europe for sure. Anyway, the guy is he's a director, but he's also this like a cinemaphile, and he's brought up the fact that Giovanni Ribisi was thanked because he has this huge collection of old 35 millimeter cameras, and that he's one of the people in Hollywood people turn to for it
Yeah.
because
Isn't that
he's
bizarre?
extremely talented in like
Yeah.
fixing them and understanding them and all that. I was like, really? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
the actor is this like savant with like VistaVision cameras. Yeah, I mean, it's Spielberg and unsurprisingly talked about Paul Thomas Anderson's choice to use a film format and camera format that literally harkens back to the 60s,
Yeah.
and it was difficult to work with as a result of it's pretty unused at this point. Like, everybody is Panavision, Panaflex, blah blah blah, or digital at this point. And and they talked about the grain, and that's the nerdy stuff that they do and they talk about. But the idea that all this effort was made, and that's part of the way that production design and these kind of choices go into the weeds produces this seamless world that we don't think about as viewers so clearly. But as you and I get deeper into this process of and have this rhythm of working through a film this way, and choosing out this like these obsessions through the
Yeah.
production notes that we discover, is what I've really enjoyed as part of this process.
Yeah, and I think Paul Thomas Anderson from Inherent Vice, he also did The Phantom Thread, which I liked a
Yeah,
lot. His kind of part of his whole kind of um, work or why, however you want to say, is about obsession. And
yeah,
there is these characters of obsession. And I really, that's something I've started to appreciate more and more because I didn't
yeah.
like his early films as much as I do like his later films. And in fact, I've kind of gone back and rewatched most of his films over the last few years because I don't think I gave him the credit that he deserved.
No, well, I mean, I haven't watched many of his films. I find his movies at times to be they're kind of hard to latch on to because they're so uh, fastidious, right? Like, there's a fastidiousness to them, and you appreciate them, and that's the difference. Like, you can be a savant, a cinephile, and be like, man, this is incredible. What these the effort that's made here and how they do that, but it doesn't make it a rewatchable or something you want to go back to, sadly, at times. Where this one, I'm like, wait, there is just so much more I need to consume and learn from this movie. And I mean, whether it's Sean Penn's performance or and the character he's building with his high and tight and the way he treats the high side of his tight with the combing and the cow licking practically.
Yeah,
It's wild. And the language, like I could just, if we got to watch this movie when we were in high school, think of all the things, and the fact that this film isn't in the zeitgeist really at all, which is a drag. And I hope there's an opportunity that this film has a slow burn. Like, it's done modestly well theater wise. And I did see that they hopefully are going to re-release it in December as part of, like, probably Oscars movement and stuff.
sure.
But if this film had been like a movie in our high school days, it would have been so part of the zeitgeist. We'd be quoting, the double Yankee White over and over and over again to our friends. It's like, you need a double Yankee White with that. I mean, it would just be endless. I can't even
Viva
imagine.
la revolution! I mean, just there are moments that are
Yeah,
that are absolutely hysterical.
yeah.
I'll tell you though, to slow burn and Paul Thomas Anderson before we go on, I took a whole series of gummies and then I was flying and I take these long flights and then I just like, watch tons of films. Inherent Vice is one of the films I watched. The person next to me must have been like, what the fuck is up with this guy? I was hysterically laughing the whole time, like tears laughing. The guy, the person was like, what is this guy? He's losing his shit. I was just baked off my ass watching Inherent Vice, loving it.
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds like a nice
It was
trip.
good, I have to say. It was a fun trip, one of the
Yeah,
few. So
yeah.
what about this film? What do
Yeah, I
we
mean,
have to say?
there's different things to frame it. Like, there's obviously it's kind of split temporarily. And the first half is the young days and just to introduce the characters, we were introduced to Leonardo DiCaprio playing Ghetto Pat, or the Rocket Man, who's part of this ragtag revolutionary group that's Weather Underground like, but they're called the French 75, and he's teamed up with Perfidia Beverly Hills, who's played by Tiana Taylor, and they're basically, the film opens with them, being instigators. They're like they're they raid a immigration detention center and release everybody. They're blowing up banks. They're or abortion centers. Or no, what am I saying? Like pro life centers or something like
Yeah.
that. I don't know. It doesn't matter necessarily.
Cell
And
towers, right?
yeah, oh yeah, and so that's this part. And obviously there's two principal things that happen that are really important, is like, Ghetto Pat and Perfidia, Pat and Perfidia become a couple, and we think that they're going to be the framing of this like revolutionary family. But then there's a creeper who invades the house, and that creeper is fucking creepy as shit.
He
Who's
is
like
creepy.
was Colonel Stephen J. James Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, and Sean Penn is just, he's a tour. I mean, the performances of everybody,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's extraordinary, and the character, and this was what was cool, in the Steven Spielberg conversation. Not to keep going back to production modes, it's like they talk about the blessing of working with actors like Benicio and DiCaprio, and they come with all these creative choices. And they were laughing at the way, he's like, "Hey, did DiCaprio do this to you?" He's like, "I got a terrible idea. I got a terrible idea." And then he would come up with this incredible way of approaching his characters, actions in a particular scene. And the same thing with Benicio del Toro, like PTA was talking about, like, he's like, "Dude, I'm so distracted. I've had this other things going on and blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Just the one thing, just help me focus on my energy. I can't be Bob's energy." Because we've seen Benicio, and like The Usual Suspects. And, that character is like Bob, in terms of his like manic energy. And they're just like they just spoke of the blessing. And then, of course, the craziest one is probably Chase Infinity, where she's just like, holy shit, what a coming out party for a new talent, who
Yeah.
plays the character of the daughter, Willa.
I love the
And
way you're introduced to her. with
Yeah.
her kind of working at the kind of kung fu or jujitsu
Yeah.
studio and
Yeah.
just
With,
coming at you in the camera. It's just such a
yeah.
nice moment to
Yeah.
introduce her. I love
So
it.
the initial framing is we're getting a sense like, oh, we're going to have this kind of revolutionary family that we're going to track, but in fact, it's invaded by Lockjaw, who seduces, if that's the right word, like Slash, and
There's
the
something
relationship
going on between them, and in
between
Perfidia is not
Lockjaw and
necessarily.
Perfidia, and what's important. And basically, I love Lockjaw's trying to describe this as a reverse rape at the very end of the film.
Take my power.
She saw my power, and and she took it. She needed to take it, and so I haven't like fleshed out how the machinations of like the differences between the abuser and the abused, and the revolutionary versus the oppressor, and how they're intertwined, and that's what PT's kind of alluding to in this conversation. But all that matters ultimately that comes out of this is uh, Lockjaw becomes the baby daddy of Willa to Perfidia, and that it's really the setup that matters, and simply to create this conversation about
Yeah.
an absent mother, a kind of a fucked up but stable father, who's trying
Yeah.
to be there, and a flawed but a present father, and then the quote birth father, right, and who's a birther, if you will, more than anything. And so that first part is just, it's almost like a weird, most complex MacGuffin I've ever seen in a film in my life. It's like we need to get these three. Well, there's only one. I mean, who's a hero in this film other than Willa? But it's like we need to get these people up in a tree and start shaking them madly. And the sad thing is the Tiana Taylor character is gone
Yeah.
after for the rest of the film.
Yeah, and she's so amazing in that first 15, 20 minutes film. And
Yeah.
I think it's worth like reflecting a little bit. Like the film opens up, they basically go through the hijinks, which are political,
Yeah.
um, motivated, where they're
Free
starting the
borders, free
revolution,
bodies, free choices, free from fucking fear.
which is great, right? Like it
Yeah.
does really resonate. And um, it's great because Bob the Rocket Man is kind of clueless.
Yeah.
He's like, "Just tell me what to do," and then, "I want fireworks, baby," and then he
Yeah.
goes out and they
Yeah.
kind of but, like, even when he's talking to Perfidia's mom and, what seems like maybe her sister, and, Perfidia's sleeping on the couch, and they're kinda
Yeah.
like, what's going on between you 2? Like, do you know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you're in for?" And he's just
Yeah.
kinda clueless, and then that whole first part deals with, like, them having the kid, and then
Right.
him being kind of, the caretaker for the kid, and Perfidia just being like, "Fuck this, I do not wanna be locked into this
Right.
relationship and to this
Right.
kid," and then they go out, and there's that famous, well, I don't know if it's famous, but that awesome bank robbing scene, when Perfidia literally loses it, and the film takes the course where, this French 75 is on the run. They've killed a security guard, and Lockjaw comes in, and essentially, the entire group, not the entire group, but most of the group is kind of hunted down and killed because Perfidia turns them in.
Yeah.
And there's that whole,
Yeah.
just ramp up in the beginning where Perfidia is just this fascinating character. And obviously she's seducing Lockjaw, but she's using Lockjaw so she
Right.
can get out, go to Mexico, and disappear. So she's like a fascinatingly complex character. And just Lockjaw is like the best comic relief you can ever get, knocking on the door with his like khaki jeans and the
And his
flowers.
blue blazer and the flowers, going for his prize, because he's saved her. What is the quote? It's like, I can offer you the loving arms of the embrace of the federal government. Yeah, I mean, so I really, let's talk a little bit more about that. Really, I think important scene. So, you know, um, Rocket Man or Pat, Leonardo's character has no idea that this is not his daughter, right? I
No,
don't think it's never described like
no.
and we don't even know all the way through the entire film whether he ever finds out, because we do know at some point that um that Willa knows for sure,
Yeah,
right? And we'll get there. But the idea is that you're right. There's this scene. The baby shows up, and Perfidia is, literally jealous
that's right.
of the attention that and it's Charlene in the early life. It's Charlene and Pat where it becomes Bob and Willa. Charlene gets all his attention, and this is the beginning of this like description of this father figure, this father character that goes from I see myself in my young youth as a person who's going to change the world to I see myself as at least I can fix one fucking thing and maybe take care of this one human being, right?
Well,
And that's what I ultimately fell in love with them as a father daughter who basically there's two scenes of them together in the entire film practically.
yeah, and that scene that you're talking about reminded me, like, when he's got the baby and he's kind of
Yeah.
rocking her, and Perfidia's like, "I want no part of it." He's like, "We're a family now. Come on."
Yeah.
Like, he's like, really like, "Come on, this is a changing moment." And we talked about this already in Children of Men. Like, that moment of birth, that
Yeah.
passage through to parenthood is an intense, insane moment for all kinds of different emotional reasons, right? Like, your whole life worldview just shifts. I've very few things in my life ever, none actually, have
Yeah.
shifted them that dramatically. And they're going through that right now. So their respective reactions are completely understandable to me and
Yeah.
completely real. And,
Right.
add that you're kind of part of a, terrorist group on the run, changes
Yeah.
things even
Well,
worse.
her reaction is so interesting. Where he's like saying, "We're a family now. You can't keep running out and like trying to shoot up the
Yeah.
joint, right?" And her response, is one of my favorite quotes. It's like, "I put myself first, and this is the best part of this. I reject your lack of originality." Like the idea is like don't be this like typical man who thinks that it's all about us being a family now. That's just stupid. We're not that. And she can't handle it, as you're just saying. Like her response is like, I can't handle this. Fuck, I'm out of here. Right.
But and to her credit, right? She's also truly a revolutionary in that regard.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't want to get into that role. Like,
Right.
that's not what this is about. And there's a scene where they're all hanging out and she's like, this is what it's all about when she's fucking shooting that gun off, right? And like, it's clear, like,
The
and
guns are the guns is the fucking fun. There's two quotes from her that I
exactly.
love so much. So she's like, bam, bam, bam. It's the famous, it's like, you know what? Oh God, you know what it reminds me of now, which is so awesome. And it's such a great reference. It's basically Sylvester Stallone and Rambo 2 with his
Totally.
M60. He's got his like
Yes.
M60, a gun that there's no way someone is supposed to be holding with one arm, that's shooting out like 60 caliber bullets or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. And their whole body's vibrating. And for Stallone, it was like he was like all greased up, and so he's glistening all muscly. But it's this maternal version of that where
Yeah.
she's glistening with her giant exposed belly, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Rambo 2. That's insane,
And that's the ad on various when I was in LA,
Yeah.
there's still ads up for this, and they were on the bus stops, like, the back of the bus stop was a long, like, 70 millimeter shot of her with
Wow.
the gun and the belly. I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
that's iconic for sure."
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is a picture of motherhood for sure. And you know,
It's one of
and
the most original pictures of motherhood we've seen so far.
Yeah, 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 and you're right. I mean, just to go back a little bit to Perfidia's mom, who's like basically like, what are you two doing together? And
Yeah,
she says she's a runner, you're a stump, and
that's right.
and but it's kind of like he is a stump. He's the perfect stump. He's like the giving tree stump. He's the thing you could
Yeah, totally.
that Willie is going to be able to lean on her whole life. And we don't know that in the moment, but we figure that out kind of soon enough.
And so, That takes us to, and we could talk a little bit like the actual bank robbery scene for me was directly out of Tarantino. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
shift in tone, the way,
yeah.
she gets up on the bank thing and she
Everybody be
starts.
cool. This is a robbery, but instead it's like, my name is Jungle Pussy, and this is what power looks like.
So fucking great. I was in there, and went over to Tommy. I'm like, this is Tarantino. Like, this is
Yeah,
like he is having fun here. There's no two ways
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Amazing scene. Also, the chase scene after that. I love a good car chase, and that was great. I love the helicopter view, and
yeah.
really made me feel like there's nowhere you can go. You know, but the next scene is a shift. I think it's 16 years later,
Yep.
and we kind of move to Bob and Willa have moved out. We see them move. We hear about their movements a little bit. I think they're in Denver for a bit, and then
Right.
they go down to, what is this, sanctuary city. I don't remember the name of the city, but like that's this like sanctuary city where Bob
Oh,
and
right.
Willa arrive.
Right. Yeah, it's
And
not. Yeah, it's not.
it has a
What is it?
name. They keep on referring to it because
Yeah,
that's where
yeah, yeah.
obviously Lockjaw
I'll
and
say
them
it
all
again.
go.
Right, right,
But
right.
the this kind of, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but this
Oh,
whole
back 10.
moment was that
I think it's back 10.
okay? That makes sense. This
Yeah.
whole moment opens up where Bob is getting ready to go to a parent teacher conference,
Oh, I love
which
this
is
scene.
one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it was
yeah.
funny in Italian, and I actually understood it in Italian, and I was laughing hysterically because he basically, the scene I love, and I wonder if this was DiCaprio. I think based on some of the stuff you said, it might be the way he's in the car smoking that last hit before going into the parent teacher conference and vaping, but then hitting, a big shot of weed and then going in there and like adjusting his eyes and just looking around the room completely stoned and like
Yeah.
looking at the founding fathers and then talking about the alternative histories. Like he's kind of like a half-ass, washed up revolutionary, which is such a good, like, I like that. Like that's such
Oh,
a
it's
good
lovely. Like, well, the
character.
idea he's immediately interrogating the history teaching, right? Like, that's the thing that you're referring to.
Like
It's
Roosevelt,
like,
he's like telling them about Philippines, I hope.
yeah, yeah, it's like, I hope you're teaching the right kind of history. There's a lot of fucking slave owners around everywhere around on the walls here, you know?
He's just wonderful.
And but the moment that's great in that is like, as soon as the teacher starts to talk about Willa, who's a teenager now, she's 16. And the way she's introduced with her sensei, like as you were talking about before the show, like the karate moves and stuff like that in the camera.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But he's immediately verklempt. Like he's
Oh yeah.
overwhelmed. Like he is such a proud, emotionally fucked up dad, like he's and the quote is like, it's like, if I get emotion, it's just tears of joy. Like he just can't handle it.
It's
Like he's
so funny, man.
and
He
and
did that so well.
and the teacher's like, oh, you're not an asshole. Like, it's like, oh, you actually care about your daughter. Oh, this is good. Oh, okay, we're good. We're
She
okay
went
here.
from "You can't do that here, you can't vape here" to,
Yeah,
"Oh, wait," and, like, obviously, there's the other piece, and this is great, like, his daughter, their daughter,
yeah,
is great, is a great kid, good
yeah,
student,
yeah,
obviously, like, extracurricular activities, right?
yeah,
Has friends,
yeah.
is cool, like has the kind of weird vibe going on with her friends, which makes her that much cooler, right? Like she's just, good kid.
She's just a
And
good kid, and
right.
he's oddly a good dad, which is probably leads to. I mean, in terms of on the Family Pictures podcast, my favorite scene of the film, and it which is the breakfast with dad and daughter. Oh my
Oh my
god,
God.
where you know it's it's like classic. It's like, what's the body switching with Jamie Lee Curtis and
Freaky Friday.
Freaky Friday. It's like Freaky Friday, but it's not. No one body switch, because the first thing we hear out of Willa is like a really, really pissed off mom, It's just like, "You're hungover and got home at 3 in the morning. Where were you?" Like, that's
Yeah.
literally the first thing she says. And
You
he's
drove?
like, and it's like, and he's all evasive. It's like, well, I was with my friends, and they had, it was the band, the old, it's because she's like, who was it? What were you doing? It's like, well, we were just drinking a little bit.
It was it's so great in that kitchen, with
Yeah.
his vape pen.
Yeah. And
He's
it just continues, and there's these things, the way that he engages her is this, like, at one point he finally, it's like, "I don't wanna be your fucking babysitter," and it's like, and he doesn't call her dad, he calls her Bob, she calls him Bob.
Bob, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, and at one point she finally is like, "Fuck off, Bob," and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," like, "Don't talk to your dad that way," but he immediately switches, and he's like, but I'm like, "I'm really proud of how you're standing up for yourself," and it's like this thing where he knows he doesn't have the agency to really be a controlling parent, even though he's terrified of what could happen, and eventually does happen in this film, where everybody's like disappeared, and there's a lot of disappearing happening in this film. And and um and so he does this thing where he's always, you know, kind of really there, which, he's so odd, but he's really still, he is the stump. He's like, but he's just like a
He
really
is so
stoned, he's a
It's a
stoned
stone
apple
stump.
drum stump. It's like, if like we could take the giving tree stump and just like have like a weed, like a joint sticking out of it, puffing, and like some sort of
It's
bottle
like
of
a
whiskey
big
on,
bong.
yeah, and there's a bottle of whiskey on top of it as well. That's what it is. And, he's always just like, you should tell me what you're always thinking, never hold back. He's saying all the lines earnestly that you would want, a good parent to say. And that's what's so interesting ultimately about this scene.
Yeah, but yet, obviously they're in he hasn't made a gigantic success for himself. It's pretty clear, right? Like they're kind of just holding on. It's not clear what he does. Does he work at the chicken factory? Is that clear? I mean, I don't
I
know what
don't
his
think he
job
has
is.
he's never named to have a job of any sort. I mean, his job is like just being stoned and taking care of daughter. He's like, well, the things that are interesting is like, speaking of like Hannah, and I was saying, I don't know if it was, I think we were talking about this before. Like, Hannah is this story of a dad who's trying to protect his daughter from, this government evil that wants to use her and take advantage of her. And so he prepares her to fight, and it's all exposed text. Like, that's the text, right?
Yeah.
Where this, all that must have happened because we, through the film, we learn that and see that, she's got skills,
Yeah. And
she's got
there's
revolutionary skills. She knows the code book, and the code book comes up, which is so fucking great. The revolutionary code book. You should have spent more time studying the code book, my son.
he's
And
that's a whole nother scene, yeah.
so there's this subtext. Instead of it being the text, it's this subtext of like, wait a minute, he's actually been preparing her this whole time. He
Yeah.
has a tunnel in the house to escape, and she probably knows about it. And like there is a lot of intentionality behind the way he's been raising her, and ultimately we learn it's for good reason.
Yeah, and the fact that he makes sure she takes that tracking device, right?
Yep.
And that identify, okay, and they have that
Yeah.
little tete-a-tete about it, but he's like, "Do it." Like
Yeah.
there's no question, like this has to be done.
This is a non-negotiable.
And she gets in the car, and I think she says, and they're like, "Dad, your dad's kind of aggro." And she's like, "He's just paranoid. He's
He
not
smokes a
that."
lot of pot, come on. But she's playing it off because, in that scene, she's like, no one's coming after you. And obviously that turns out to be not true.
Yeah,
And, but there's parts of it that she's absorbed. And we also learn later on that she's absorbed that the way that, Bob now has talked about her mother is in a positive way, that she was a hero, even though she knows it's not the truth at all.
yeah. No, I mean, that right. He's been a good guy to the end. And like, he's not
Yeah.
one of those bitter dads who
No.
embitters the kid against the other parent. Like,
Uh,
he did everything. Maybe it's a good moment to cut back because the parallel story to obviously Bob and Willa is
Yeah.
Stephen Lockjaw. And, that whole development. And one of the craziest scenes in the movie, I think, it's kind of trippy, is when Lockjaw is behind DiCaprio in the early part of the film when he's
Oh
buying
yeah.
diapers.
Yeah. And he's got like a baby bottle, like, by his teeth, in his
Exactly.
mouth. And this is the pre 16 years, so this
Yeah.
is the I'm a new dad moment. I got to get all my shit, got to figure all my stuff out. And he's just standing in line in the grocery store. And it really feels like a grocery store out of the 70s or whatever.
You know what it
Big,
reminded me of? The
what's
Nicolas
that?
Cage movie by the Coen brothers when he's going and he steals the diapers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's with Holly Hunter. Right, right, right.
I
Yeah.
I know the name of it will come back, but, like, he seemed like Nicolas Cage in that
Yeah,
scene.
yeah, he's just like completely and yeah, Lockjaw, who we get a sense knows that this is probably his daughter. He bullies as a stranger, he's bullying, Bob or Pat, he's still Pat at this point, and saying like, you got a kid, you know, you know, boy, girl, and he's just trying to be polite and get through the grocery store. And then he's like, you, you, you like black women, and you're just like, what the fuck, dude?
Exactly. Raising Arizona was the movie, but yeah,
Oh
absolutely. Like,
yeah.
I love that scene because it's just so
Yeah.
unnerving, and then it's kind of like a good, you know, example of, you know, Lockjaw's presence throughout the film. Like he's just this haunting presence out there, and I think he does that soon after he's looking and kind of starting to masturbate, watching Perfidia through the
Yeah.
through his kind of spy glasses,
Right.
and he sees sees Bob grab her ass, and he like everything changes. Like obviously the war is on, and it's not a
Yeah.
war about ideologies. He could give two shits about ideologies. He made that clear. It's a war about what's his, right? And it's a war about like his obsession and his like
Mhm.
wanting to, you know, create this strange sense of family with her because the way they set up in
Yeah.
that little house, you know what I mean? That kind of cookie cutter, like townhouse, if you will, and him like all dressed up, like you said. It's such a weird alternative reality with Lockjaw. He's looking for something, right, that he doesn't find with Perfidia, but he does ultimately find with the Christmas Club, the Christmas Adventurers Club.
The Christmas Adventurers Club, yeah, which his 16 years later, starts with, and so yeah, he's been promoted. You get a sense like he's fully in charge of a immigration detention center at this point, and he has a big date today. Like he has a big date on the day that we're coming back to check in with Lockjaw, and he's traveling through some hotel, and he ends up in a random room, and he's meeting these two other men who are like, "Oh, we're here for our daughter's wedding. Sorry that we had you don't have your a tux, so we couldn't invite you there." And there's more to it. And you're just like, "What the fuck are these people doing?" And
Yeah.
and we learn that like this is the kind of the this is the white supremacist fantasy organization. It's like the white supremacists are like, wow, if we could really be in charge and really do this right, we'd have these cool code names and we'd have enforcers. It's like we're like the mob, but we're not. We're like, white Protestant assholes, version. There's no character whatsoever. It's just like
Instead of
McMansion.
wearing pinstripe suits, we wear Patagonia.
Yeah, and we have McMansions with like bad drapes and and bad furniture. And this is where we learn of like this is but it I like the way that you're describing Lockjaw, this person who performs these things he thinks he wants and needs, because this seems like something, a performance. Like he
Oh,
thinks, he believes he needs to be like, I'm a white supremacist. Don't you think
yeah.
I'm a white supremacist? I'm like one of the top ones, like you. And that's what he comes across as, is like, it is a performance, because he's not really, because he loved Perfidia ultimately.
Yeah.
And but this leads to the MacGuffin. This is the real MacGuffin of like, we have to go after um, um, Bob and Willa because he needs to erase his past
He needs to
in order
erase his past. Exactly.
so he can wait. What is it called again? He needs to pass his voluntary vulnerability check. This is where we're introduced to it at the meeting with the Christmas Adventures Club. So it's a double white Yankee. It's a little more intense than your typical background check. It's like, man, the double white Yankee. I will remember that for the rest of my fucking life.
See that that didn't have as big an appeal to me. Not appeal. It didn't strike me as much as it did you, but now it's gonna. So you're making that a meme. So I want to thank you. But
Okay.
and interesting, in the Italian version, they weren't called the Christmas Adventurers Club. They were called like the something like the White Pioneers or something like that, which I thought was great. And so when we saw it in English, which the second time I saw it, and I saw it in English, I'm like, oh, it's not the White Pioneers, it's the Christmas Adventurers Club. That's weird.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like they're trying to present themselves as like the grown up version of the Boy Scouts. You know what I mean?
And like Saint Nick is their, I don't know, spirit
Merry
animal.
Christmas, Merry Christmas, Tim. Merry
Oh, and
Christmas.
also just that, the scene where basically they find out that Lockjaw
Yeah,
has had a relationship with
right.
Perfidia, and that's against the rules of their,
Well,
little
that's
boys
that's
club.
because the double wank Yankee was successfully able to reveal the truth.
And it's so crazy because, you follow, this is just great filmmaking. You follow one of the characters going into the house, saying hi to his friend's wife, not being a maybe I'll get that pie from you when I come back up, apple cake or whatever it is, goes to this secret space, which is like an alternative lair,
Yeah,
walks through these, crazy. I mean, it's something out of
cavernous.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
something
it's
out of like a
cavernous.
Bond film. And
Right.
then they walk into this crazily decorated room, and it's like a duck hunting room. Like, I don't even know
Uh-huh.
what it was.
Yeah.
And, this guy with his Patagonia kind of, sweatshirt or whatever, not sweatshirt, but like zip up is, the hitman. He's the assassin. Like, he
Yeah.
looks like you could be like your middle manager, right? Or like he's a hedge fund investor. Like, he's not an
He's
assassin, but
He's
he
not your
is.
yeah, but he's the wolf. He's your Harvey Keitel wolf, but he's
He
just like,
is.
yeah, he's got his duck boots on instead of like his slick suit, and he's not, or his tuxedo instead of his tuxedo, and he's not complimenting your coffee. He's instead
Yeah.
just talking about like, Tim, you got to clean this up.
And
You
the
got to,
great piece of it, yeah, you got to make it clean, right?
yeah,
But the great
mhm,
piece of it is obviously, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson is having fun with, the real kind of assassins of our age, which is the investment bankers in this whole world, right? Like, I think he's really taking a shot at it because
mhm.
that's what they
Oh
all
yeah,
look like sitting around there. It was like a business meeting, right?
yeah, yeah.
It
Mhm.
was, and like obviously the old dude who maybe owns the company. You got to clean this up, make it
Yeah, yeah.
clean.
Yeah, and he's
Eh,
the one who talks the least, but it's like he's respected the most. And yeah, I like that reading. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, and those are the kind of things. Like I think this film it hasn't had an opportunity yet to be really. It's in its initial kind of phase of like just talking about the production side of it and how people are not responding to it as a public in terms of watching and but this one is going to be baked over so
yeah,
many times.
absolutely. I agree.
And so this begins the run, right? Because they concoct, and this is the craziest. This is the language goes nuts again. It's like they concoct, and I've already mentioned it. Like this is where Special Agent Toe Jam goes over their concocted plan to assault the town where Bob and Willa are hiding out, so that he has an excuse to go after them. That Lockjaw's excuse to go after them, and they're going to hit Rimhorn's chicken lick and frozen food farm and say that there's heroin there, which is just like, and it's just so crazy. And so they, in the way that Willa
And they
feels it,
hit the school, right?
and
Like, it
that's
feels
how Willa,
very contemporary yet
yeah,
again, you know?
yeah, like the invasion of the actual, the factory. It's a real factory, and you're just like,
Yeah,
fuck,
right.
this is what ICE is literally doing. They show up in a factory and people are scattering because they're scared. They're like, I'm just trying to work and, for my family here. and they're just like rounding people up. But it's all under an excuse. And that's also really, performative. It's an excuse, right? The same thing. It's like, it's not actually going to fix any of the problems of this country or this world by doing these things. It's a performance, because what you really need, what you really want, is to clean up your image in the eyes of this billionaire class, as you're correctly describing it, so you can be one of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a really fucking crazy way to think about it now, right? Isn't it? Like, it's like, because he's the fake billionaire Trump, he's not the
Yeah.
real one. And now that he has this power over these people, these real billionaires, if you want to call them that, he can make them all crowd around him. And so Lockjaw is that, in a weird way, is kind of hilarious.
Yeah,
Man,
it is.
anyway, so that's not even that. We're talking about family here. So the idea is the family is finally back on the run, because
Exactly.
and what's cool is that, and God, we're running out of time. We're already at 50 minutes. Holy fuck. What's so great is that Willa's training finally comes into play. As you said, they're about to raid the actual high school dance. Imagine that, like the
Yeah.
federal government, in the middle of a high school dance, throwing the lights on and making everybody stop and be interrogated, every single teenager, right?
Yeah.
And so thankfully, Willa is discovered first. The SOS goes out. What's the SOS? It's Billy Goat is in the wind. Implement plan. Snap, crackle, pop, and it is on.
It is
And the
on.
SOS, and Deandra shows up from the 16 years ago. One of the French 75 that didn't get caught or executed, and her proximity sensors, they go off. And if and she's been taught, if this thing goes off, trust that person with your life.
Yeah.
And then there's the language exchanges of the code words and from the revolutionary code book. And this leads to Willa being taken under Deandra's wing and to try to save her. And this is where she finally learns out about her mom.
Yeah. She learns that her mom's a rat, and she goes on that whole journey with her, which is a great. And at the same time, Bob is essentially gets a similar call saying, Will is safe. They're coming for you.
One of my
He's
favorite.
watching the Battle of Algiers, which is awesome. He's completely baked. And he's like, okay, like I totally relate to him. There are times that I'm like this. I'm like, okay, get it together, dude. Get it together. Like he just has that like come to Jesus moment as shit's going down around him terribly, and he has to make a move. And then, obviously they go to the high school, they go to the house, and the two of them are literally at the same point on the run, but separate. And,
Right.
What happens after is great. Like it's a great kind of like this sanctuary city, quote unquote, revolts. And so they're standing off with the federal
Yeah.
officers. So the
Mhm.
whole place is kind of like a war zone now. So you have that.
Yep.
And then you see, this guy in like I don't know, it's an AC/DC shirt or no, I think it's a Van Halen shirt, who comes out and throws a Molotov. But you see that he's basically working for the federal
Yeah.
government. And like,
Yeah.
it's just that whole like the
Yeah.
world around it, kind of like Children of Men,
Yeah.
seems so identifiable as you come here. But then you have
Yeah.
this skateboarding crew who you're connected with Benicio del Toro's character, who's basically taken
Yeah.
Bob under his wing, says, come with me, Bob. All right, Bob. Listen to me, Bob. It's just so great. And
Ocean waves. Stay after tatami.
Bob the whole time is just trying to remember the password so that he can be
So
told the rendezvous point to meet
what's
Willa.
what's the password he needs to? What's the question? You remember?
It's like, what is time? Right? No,
What
or
time? No, it's just simply
what
what
time
time
is
is
it?
it?
Yeah. And like time is a construct or something like
And
that.
it
And he's
still
like,
controls you. It's like, fuck you. You clearly never had kids. Yeah, I mean,
that was
there's
great.
these dueling pathways, right? And this is the framing for basically the remainder of the film is like, are Willa and Bob going to be able to find one another again? And Willa's not really sure what she's in for, and that's a big part of how she receives shelter from the, what do they call the sisters of the brave sisters of the brave beaver. And there's a
That's
great And there's a great quote from PTA where he talks about how Infinity had, it's like, why is it called the Brave Beaver? And PTA has to explain to her Chase Infinity the euphemism of beaver because she'd never heard it before, which is so like,
That
Gen
is
Z that she had
crazy.
never heard
Yeah.
of it. And she's like, ew, disgusting. You're so gross.
Yeah. You're a pervert.
Yeah, I can only imagine how awkward the dad. He was like, that's a classic awkward dad moment. Which, another part of this is like, it's a bit of a confession of a flawed father story for Paul Thomas Anderson. Apparently, he self admitted, probably not always that present of a dad if you think about it. Like the amount
It's
he
hard.
must work to pull off this kind of storytelling, I can't even imagine. And he's got four children with Maya Rudolph. And so, it seems like a classic, like awkward dad with their, Gen Z child, pointing out like, you don't get it. Oh, and there's another one where you don't get it with the binary, the non-binary, they,
That,
them. It's not hard, dad.
that is a moment, right? That is
Yeah.
when they get in the car. Just that whole scene is great when she's getting ready to
Yeah.
go and he's interrogating them. It's like, I'll do it to your family. Whatever you do to
Yeah.
her, I'll do to your whole family. But
And
then,
so,
yeah,
no, you go ahead.
no,
Or
no,
do
go.
okay. So, you know, one of the most important. So we have Willa who's learning that her mother is actually the rat, but quickly it turns into she's also learning who her birth father is, and this
Yeah.
is because the sisterhood of what is it, the sisterhood of the what beaver, the brave beaver,
Brave Beaver, yeah.
is found out, and Lockjaw comes down and basically ties up every nun, and there's this really terrifying scene of where we're just seeing nuns with their heads against the wall, all with their hands behind their back with zip ties, and he grabs Willa and shoves her into this big open space, and he whips out this like quick DNA test,
Yeah, and
and
they're in a church,
in a
like an old
church.
mission church.
Yeah, an empty mission church, right? There's no pews or anything like that. It's just the open, massive space, and it's time for confession. And the confession time includes this awkward throwback to be manners matter, dad, in the form of Sean Penn saying like things like, "Well, you went to a dance." You were going to a dance today because she's still in the outfit of when she was going to the dance. It's literally a 24 hours. This whole film happens when it's post 16 years, the entire thing happens within basically less than 24
Yeah,
hours. And he's like, what kind of effort you making? You need to put on more makeup, like, and he starts like pissing nuggets at her like this. And he's like, and later on when they discover that he is the birth father and she now knows this is her birth father, and she starts attacking him. It's like, why are you wearing such a tight shirt?
yeah, exactly.
And it's like, I'm not gay. It's not because I'm gay. it's just, and so there is this like weird glimpse of like, I'm gonna fuck with you because you're related to me,
Yeah.
and so that's just so.
Or how lucky she is that that's not actually the father
I
she
know,
had to grow up with, right? Or be
right?
with, or whatever that is. But there's also that strange DNA test, right? Where he's doing,
Uh-huh.
in situ a DNA test to make sure
Right.
that it's true. And if these lines don't align,
If
you
this
know,
line is straight, yeah, that's and that becomes like this visual thing that we're tracking at the same time, and it's very classic Paul Thomas Anderson, like tension building, and I always think of one of the most tense scenes I ever saw in my life is the Boogie Nights, trying to sell the fake cocaine to Fred Molina in his like silk silver robe and his black like tighty whities, and there's a kid in the background throwing firecrackers, and I'm just like, this is one of the most intense like sonically scenes I've ever seen in my life. And it does the classic like there's guns, there's violence that's threatening this whole situation at all times, and this in the final chase scene have that like tension of violence that you're like, this is going to explode. And the explosion is, he's like, well, I guess I have to have you killed,
yeah,
right? And so at the same time he's like trying to say, it's like, I gotta have you killed, and this is just really sad because if you had some manners, if you'd been raised right, we might have gotten to know each other.
And it introduces, not introduces, actually, this character is coming around for the second time, but this is the Native American
Yeah,
tracker who's
yeah,
in that white Charger. And
yeah.
I mean, that whole scene, that whole
Uh,
chase scene
uh-huh.
is amazing. Obviously, it's referencing, the chase scene that Tarantino did in Death Proof, and
Right.
obviously he was referencing Point Blank and some of those other ones. But that chase scene's amazing. But
Yeah.
the most Tarantino piece of that is when essentially the Native American says, "I don't like that this happened to a young girl. It's not
Yeah,
part of my
Avanti.
business,"
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then returns to where these white supremacists are,
The
and
1776ers.
yeah, and they basically have a shootout. And that
Uh-huh.
is like just out of a Tarantino movie, is it not? Like it's as if that was a Tarantino scene from one of
Yeah.
his movies. It was intense, like the violence, the tension, her sitting there trying to get out while all this is happening. Like that was a crazy scene.
Yeah, yeah, and so, Willa is the lucky one in this situation ultimately because she doesn't get, Avanti, who's the tracker, pushes her away, gets her away, and she tries to escape and realizes she doesn't have the key. She can't start his car and take off, so she goes back. And then again, we start to see like, oh, Willa's got skills because she grabs his pistol from the car,
Yeah.
and she walks back to the scene because she knows she has to get his keys, and she's like gun drawn and ready to use it. And like he's like, oh, she knows her way around a handgun and doesn't have to use it. But ultimately, this leads to it's been kind of setting us up to like Will is not, despite this relationship with her dad, it's never going to happen. Like she's a Hannah, right?
Yeah.
She's got the skills of a cutthroat killer that understands strategy in these moments, and that's what's so amazing about the way that chase scene culminates. It's like a roller coaster, and like they're
Yeah.
going
It
up
is
and down,
truly like
up
a roller
and down.
coaster.
Have you ever driven roads like that?
I have out west, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's why I loved it. I loved
yeah.
like you could feel it with the way the camera was going. Like you were in the car. I saw one of them times I saw it was in IMAX, and it was awesome to watch that
Oh
in
wow, yeah.
IMAX. It was just amazing.
It's so sad because I had an IMAX ticket to this film, and like family matters got in the way, and I didn't get to use it and watch it. So I really hope this comes back to IMAX in December
It
because I
was
will.
nice to see
Yeah.
that scene in particular in IMAX was amazing.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I've driven like I remember driving in Missouri we have some friends that live out there, and there was a similar like these kind of rolling hills and twisting. And I'm like, dude, Corey, slow the fuck down. But he knows the road, so he's kept. But I'm always just like, oh my
Yeah,
god, like there's all these
insane.
blind spots, and this leads to, and at the same time, what's crazy is so I mean, there's things we're going to kind of run out of time. Like to delve into Benizio's character, he's like the shepherd
Yeah,
of this old sanctuary town, and I kind of put a note there at the end, but and I maybe in another way we'll talk about it. But what's important is Bob does slowly but surely find his way towards a Willa, and the machinations are Tim has like tried to execute. He's out there trying to execute. Tim is again the wolf of the Christmas
gotcha.
Adventurers Club, and Tim is he's driving his like muscle car and he's chasing down Lockjaw
Lockjaw.
right after he's dumped Will on Avanti, and he just guns him down with a shotgun, boom, and like we get a sense like, oh, Lockjaw's out of the picture. And it's like, oh well, and then and you get a sense. Bob runs across this, and he's like trying to yell for Willa out in the desert, hoping she's still alive because he sees like Lockjaw's upside down in his truck and dead, and so then the chase just continues, and it's just like, where is this, and how is this going to end? And it ends with this incredible cleverness,
Yeah.
you know.
She parks the car over one of those hills that he can't see beyond,
And
close enough for him to just rear end it and then
Yeah.
she has him as shooting practice.
Yeah, and she doesn't, because he doesn't know the code words, right?
That's right. It doesn't know the
Yeah.
code words. And
Yeah.
it actually, I mean, obviously we're not doing
Green
Benicio del
Acres,
Toro.
Beverly Hillbillies in Hooterville Junction. What's the
Yeah.
answer, Jim? It will no longer be relevant. That's the
Yes.
correct answer.
but but the thing too, coming out of the tail end of this film, is we're not going to do Benicio del Toro enough justice in that
Oh,
character. But I
yeah.
just love that scene when he goes into the kind of the alternative universe of those who
Yeah.
are on the run, right?
Yeah.
Those who are resisting, and all their different ways of doing that, whether it's on the roof, whether it's
Yeah.
behind, in the store next door, just
Yeah.
walking through that space in which he lives, and all the kids are there, and he's like, get out of there, this is my room, or say
Yeah.
hello to my, whether it's sister or wife or father, you don't know, but like there's this whole kind of community of hope there,
Yeah.
right? And there is a sense that there is an alternative, right? And
There
there
is a
is a
resistance, and
sense of
it's thriving.
resistance.
And it's
Exactly.
and he represents the resistance surviving and thriving. And what's so wonderful is Paul Thomas Anderson, there's no exposition necessary. He just performs the actions of someone who's truly shepherding those that need saving,
Yeah.
and bringing them to safety. And it's all done with sensei like calmness. And
It's amazing. Yeah.
and he never he's and it's like he's the perfect dad. He never gets angry. And there's this wonderful scene where, because what's cool is the sensei character is kind of in awe of Bob, because he knows who he is, from his days as being part of the French 75. And he's like, fucking saving a French 75 twice in one day, and he's when he's driving him to the nuns of the Brave Beaver, trying to.
You like to say that, you pervert.
I know, I love it. It's so bad and awesome. And he has this moment, but there is this moment where we have another glimpse of Bob's fatherhood, because he's like, you know, and he thinks the main text is like, I didn't teach her enough for this moment, right? And he's trying to say, like, God, I should have prepared her better. And he's like, I was a failure. But he's really talking about, it's like, I don't know how to be the dad I'm supposed to be. And he says this, like, I don't even know how to do her hair, right? That's what her
Yeah.
mom's supposed to do. And it's this classic moment of regret for a father trying to figure out who they're supposed to be to their child, yet he doesn't realize he's done the most important thing, and he's just been there and listened to her and given her advice and taught her well, because she ices Tim in a hot second. It's like, you
She
did
does.
good, Dad. You did real good. You're like
she,
incredible.
she does ice him, which is beautiful. And I
Yeah.
mean, there's two denouements of this film, right? Like you get the high
Yeah.
action, and then
Yeah.
you get the one with Willa and Bob. And there's, we'll go to that next. We'll last, but the first one we'll start with is Lockjaw.
Oh,
Somehow survives. He's kind of like a creature out of a George Romero film, or Mad Max walking on the highway. It's insane.
yeah.
And then we cut to which has to be, a couple of plastic surgeries later, where he
Yeah. Yeah.
looks like a freak. The makeup is so insane.
Yeah.
And that's where he tells the story that you referenced at the beginning of the podcast, where he's basically saying, I was seduced, I was raped,
I was reverse raped.
reverse.
And the Christmas video, what's that?
Yeah.
Can you
How exactly
explain
does
that?
that work?
Yeah, what's that word? Oh, she needed my man. I was unconscious, and I had a sense of there was some stuff there when I reawakened.
Some residue. Yeah, that was just insane. And the thing is, that weird thing, I'm kind of talking about Lockjaw searching for whatever, which is never clear. It
Yeah,
seems like what he really wanted out of that whole relationship, and why he risked, going back, and ultimately meeting his doom, was for a corner office,
yeah,
like a indescript corner office that is like a nightmare. I was just in one of those buildings here in San Jose, and like I this trip just reminded me how much corporate culture fucking sucks and how I want no part of it. And I think like that's what he's aspiring to. It's such a
Yeah.
weird character. Like he's a military dude who wants a corporate job in a corner office.
I
What? I
mean,
don't
I
know.
I think it's I mean, maybe it's like about, the futility of this like misdirected anger ultimately, right? Like thinking like, well, if I get this, then my misdirected anger at, being a white supremacist, despite that I love this woman of color. And, it's this performance of, well, if I just have this, I'll be fine. And he puts his feet up, in that indistinct corner office with a great view, and which is nothing. It's like strip malls, Phoenix style, like great view, whatever the fuck it is. And they gas him and kill him,
Yeah.
because like even though they made him a member, they were bullshitting him, and they immediately shove him in an incinerator.
Yeah,
And
they luckily have an incinerator on premise.
on site, it's a feature of this. When they rented this place, the realtor's like on site,
Uh,
high intensity boiler, coal fires, so you can incinerate whatever you need. All
yeah,
sorts of options there.
it was a
Um,
custom they had put in
yeah,
the
yeah,
Christmas club.
right. But the real finish is the scene between Bob and Willa, and Bob revealing that he's been holding on to a letter from her mother, and it's addressed to her. And I really wanted. This is what I was like more interested. One of the things I was really interested in is what do you think of this letter of regret that Perfidia tries to spell out to her daughter.
I mean, that could be its own movie, right? Like them coming back together and just dealing with the fact that, she's obviously taking blame, but it doesn't matter because you can't make up for time.
No, right.
And so, like, I feel like there was a sense of hopelessness to the fact that she had lost all that, but also a sense of like, maybe then there's the second part, right? Will is still young. Like, there's still maybe a possibility there. I don't know. But I think it was, for me, it was just like a parent, a kind of a nightmare story of a parent who wasn't there, and it's almost
Right.
like an admission of guilt, right? Or trying to
Oh,
come
absolutely.
to, and like that's hard. Like luckily my kids are about Willa's age or older, and I'm not in that situation, but who knows if I could have been, and what would have happened and how hard that would be to navigate the fact that you were essentially absent for your entire kid's childhood. Like,
It's just their existence, right? I mean,
yes.
it's right now it's childhood, and I mean, this is okay. Personal story wise, I'm a child of divorce, and my father was this mother, like literally absent, never connecting at all, and in literally it's crazy, but in his dying days, my brother connected with him, and I had the opportunity to connect with him too. And I had a phone call. And at this time, I was in a weird part of my life. I was like in transition. I was like classic 20 somethings in transition. And I couldn't handle it. Right. And,
Yeah.
I had an ugly phone call with him. First, it was like, I literally remember when he picks up the phone and he starts talking. And the first thing I can think is like, I don't recognize this voice. And your brain is trying to calculate that. What does it mean to have this human being on the other end of the line that's your father? And you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't,
It's
it didn't make
crazy.
any sense. And it was an awful call. And when he ends up moving in with my brother, because he has this terrible disease that was basically he was drowning in his own lung fluid of his lungs. He was going to stop being able to breathe. And I knew like I was the pack rat type. I looked through stuff. And after he passed, we went to my brother's we had visited him again right before he died. And we went to the garage where my brother had stored a bunch of his stuff. And I was looking for things because I knew he would probably have stuff about us in there. And I found a letter he had started that was
Oh,
similar to this
wow.
idea of a letter. and he couldn't finish it. He couldn't fucking even finish it. And that's what's so the way I frame this letter, it's like, in part of me is like, well, she finished it and sent it, right? At least she was brave enough, even though in my mind it was similar to my dad's letter. Like, it was very ego driven ultimately. She's projecting herself onto Willa, right? Like, maybe you'll be the revolutionary I wasn't,
Yeah.
and maybe you'll come find me when you're ready. And she's like, I'm never fucking necessarily looking for you. Cause when she's done reading this, what does she do? She walks out the door and fucking hugs her father,
Yeah.
right? Because
Who's
he's the
there?
one who's there, right?
That's right.
And that's it was. I didn't even read it that way initially, and then the more as I do with these films, and I reread and look at stuff over and over again, I was like, holy fuck, this happened to me, and it doesn't make sense. It really, and that's why I like how she didn't really emotionally react to it.
Yeah.
Right. You could see there another director would have her choose to be emotionally overwrought, but she's emotionally overwrought when she walks out of the room and goes to her father, you
Yeah.
know?
And like that's the point where you were like, there's no question about who the dad is. And that
Yeah.
goes back to a lot of what we had talked about, like what is blood versus the people who are there and around, and what is the family, right? The family, we talked about that with the outsiders, the family you make.
Yeah.
And, obviously she had no control of it, the situation, she's a certain amount of pushed into it, but, there were choices. And, he, as a terrible father by all counts from the outside, to your point, is a wonderful dad and gave her, a situation where she's leaving to go to Oakland,
Yeah.
to join the next revolutionary movement. And, he's sitting there trying to figure out the
Yeah. What is
phone
it?
on the
Yeah.
couch, worrying about other things, because to your point earlier, I think he feels like, yeah, I think this one's good. I think
Yep.
we balanced the mom issue. Like when you're talking about with your dad, like that shit doesn't go away. You just
No.
have to learn how to live with it, learn how
Mhm.
to manage it. And then, you have this one parent who you can rely on and who's enough. And that's a nice, very optimistic, but realistic ending to what I think is just a brilliant film.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm gonna watch this film many times more for sure. And for those who haven't seen it, fucking go out there and watch this movie. I think it starts streaming today. When we record this, it's November 14th on a Friday, and we'll put this out on Monday. But yeah, it's a wild ride, and there's a lot in there that I think I'm gonna be unpacking for a long time.
Yeah. Well, we did it again. We did it again.